Hello all, my name is Heather Chavez and this is my Technology and Learning in-service. Thank you very much. Through this in-service, we're going to talk about how technology has changed. I will help provide you with some examples of how to implement technology. I will discuss how to go about training your fellow teachers and being a support for them, and a discussion on how to reflect on your implementation of technology to make sure that it was effective for your students. Teaching is a profession where best practices and technologies are constantly evolving and changing to fit the needs of the time. And I remember when I was in school, we had chalkboards up on the wall. As I got older and I was doing my student teaching, they used personal chalkboards, and the classroom teacher had whiteboards already. As a teacher myself, we have a smartboard in which I write on, and my students have personalized little whiteboards. And so as new technology develops, old technology is being not, obsolete. In another example, we talk about communication and the tools that students use, the tools that teachers use. And you'll notice that more and more kids are taking iPads or laptops to school to take notes. They're using digital presentations instead of poster boards. And so all of that means is that everything within the profession of teaching is changing and it's evolving because students and the times change and evolve. A little more on changes in technology. Again, students accessing information is no longer teacher-centered. They are in charge sometimes of acquiring their own knowledge. Search engines, web-based learning are all part of just the curriculum these days. If you look at teacher supplies, again, sometimes textbooks are being made obsolete because all of the material is digital and students are given access within classes that belong to the textbook that that districts purchase. I remember again when I was in school, there was one computer in a classroom. Right now, my kindergartners have a 1-to-1 iPad ratio. And that's all very reflective of how in the past technology wasn't where the classroom was headed, but currently with all of the online resources and the access to technology that students have, that is most definitely where the future is going. Just to kind of put things in perspective, I wanted to show a timeline of how technology has changed. And if you think back to Zach Morris and Saved by the Bell, you remember his cell phone, and it was that giant gray just beast. And if you look at cell phones now, the things that they can do and the size that they're being made just again show you the range of how far technology has come. 1990s, internet is readily available. I can remember myself going on to chat rooms and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. 2000s, even chat rooms have changed, and it's no longer a chat room. There's social media where you can post and add pictures and just commentary, and the information is so readily available on a global scale. With today being 3D printing, and again, those access to digital textbooks, kindergartners are put into classes that they can go on and monitor themselves and complete assignments independently of teacher-driven instruction. So again, I'm going to date myself, and if you think back to societal norms, when I was in college, that was when I got my first cell phone, and it was only because I was driving our clunker car and it was 45 minutes away. If you look at the majority of college-age students today, starting with 18 to 29-year-olds, they all have 3 devices. If you were a kiddo, it was unheard of that you had a cell phone because you were always with people you knew and grown-ups, and they had their own ways of communicating. But today, however, technology has evolved and it's so readily available that more people are using technology, obviously, with 2/3 of the population. With so many people using technology, it's inevitable that it's going to lead to those advances in technology. And as technology advances in society, it's going to have an effect in the classroom, and which is why, again, teachers need to be a little open-minded about updating practices and making sure that they advance their classrooms in the technological sense, because that's where the community at large is going. As a teacher, if you're going to use technology as a tool for learning, there are certain things that you need to yourself be made aware of and to make sure that you're fully understanding before you implement that technology. You need to make sure that you know what it is you want students to understand by the end of the lesson, and make sure that the technology enhances that. If you're spending more time on teaching how to use the technology, and that process isn't going to then shift to them using that technology fluently in order to learn content, it's important to understand that and to make sure that you adjust the technology that you use, or adjust your teaching method in general on that one. You need to understand what your comfort levels are with technology. If you are at a basic understanding, you're not going to want to, as much as I want you to dive right in, you're going to want to make sure that you kind of dip your toe in, see how something works, see how it plays out in your classroom. Did it totally disrupt your settings? But you need to also not be afraid of that. If in the end the lesson was a success, keep using that same technology until you're a little bit more comfortable with it. And then, just like going into that pool, get a little bit deeper and just continue to integrate more technology in order to help those students understand the content. But again, just keep in mind what your end goals are. And the thing is with technology, more than likely, your kids are going to know what it is that they're doing, even if you don't, because they've been exposed to it for a longer amount of time. So if they're comfortable with it, use that energy and feed off of it, and just continue to learn and grow and practice your own technology integration. But please make sure that you are understanding the rules of technology. That means you're following your ISTE standards and making sure that students are safe, making sure that the content is safe. You'll notice in this PowerPoint, you don't see any student faces. And if the graphic was brought in from the computer, it's all cited right there. So again, you want to make sure that you're using and modeling the technology in the right way and implementing those best practices with your students. When you are integrating technology, you want to make sure you do so in a way that's as smooth as possible. I would suggest meeting with principals and administrators to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible. And in order to do that, you're going to want to make sure that you train your teachers well. And you also want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So I would suggest creating goals, standards, and guidelines in order to make sure teachers know exactly what's expected of them. If you're the teacher that needs a little help, you need to know who to go to. And so creating that plan and making sure that you know where you go if you need to troubleshoot, or where you need to go if you need a refresher on a training. All of that is part of integrating technology and helping to make sure that it is successful. It also means that teachers need to know what's available to them. When I first started at this school, I had no idea that kindergartners were going to be getting iPads. I have actually never used an iPad before I taught kindergarten. And so I took it home several weekends in a row, played around with it, made sure I was familiar with it, and knew exactly what it is I was going to be teaching my students. So again, you want to make sure that when you integrate technology, you're avoiding confusion, and you're making it as smooth as possible, and you're making sure everyone is comfortable as possible, and having a clear set in stone plan of knowing who to go to and what's expected will help with that. When it comes to integrating technology, teachers are really only limited by their imagination. When it comes to interactive websites, places like BrainPop and Starfall allow students to read books to each other. They practice sight words. It's really very personalized and custom to what you need it to if you want it to be. When we talk about smartboard lessons, there is a plethora of knowledge on there, and the thing is almost anything on the smartboard is going to be interactive and allow students to, again, get up and move or click and drag and just practice those basic computer and, at this point, basic smartboard skills. When it comes to using technology online, Google Docs, I've seen several classrooms where they'll create a Google Doc and it's a shared document, and students are expected to keep adding to the story and making sure that it makes sense. If you look at this little guy over here, he is actually on our class blog. And If you ever want something a little more structure or a little less, depending on how you use it, click on this Padlet link and you will see how we tracked the butterfly life cycle. And it was a great way that we also involved the community, because I had other people joining us to make sure that they added questions and comments. And you'll see that if you look to the right on the link that's provided. But again, it's as easy as sharing a document, it's as intricate as creating a blog, or it's as hands-off as going to BrainPop or Starfall and allowing students to monitor and do things all themselves. The reflection process is a really important aspect of teaching. We are constantly double checking to see how a lesson went and to make sure that it went the way we wanted to. Were our learning goals met? Did the behavior match our expectations? All of that plays into account when you think of our end goal of making sure students are prepared by the end of the day and by the end of the year. And so when I thought about technology, I wanted to make sure that I had a separate reflection piece just to kind of make sure that I was making every possible adjustment that I needed to make sure it was successful. And so you see, I've got my type, I've got the date, and when I realized that different times affected our our technology differently, I added time. And so I do need to still go in and add what time it was that I thought it would work afterwards. I did in these sections. So if you look, that after lunch, my students could not sit as long. And so we limited the comments and we made sure then that we're going to put it in the morning. Um, for future reference, I will turn off notifications because we'd be in the middle of a math lesson and all of a sudden we'd get a ding saying that someone was checking out our butterflies, and I wanted my kiddos to focus on what we were doing then. And again, when I integrated our blog, I want to use it after our centers because they're winding down as far as behavior and that academic stamina. And by jumping on that computer, they're able to kind of stay focused a little bit longer and they're refreshing their memory on different topics that we've learned. And so I just found this to be super effective and a great way to take notes on what exactly it is that I need to make sure that I reflect on for the next time I use technology in our classroom. Thank you so much. Please let me know if you have any questions.